Hi, everyone. The other day I did a video where I went over this video here that is almost 50 minutes long, and it was made by the Department of Tourism in New Mexico. And they did this interview with Forrest Fenn back in 2015. The interview is no longer around, but like I said in that video, it's on Jack Stoof's YouTube channel. Here you can see it. Basically, this is an unedited version of the full interview, which Jack had contacted I guess, the director, and he received these. Here's a promo reel that the Department of New Mexico Tourism did. And just to give you a refresher in your mind, I pointed out in that video how Forrest Fenn was instructed to lie in this following statement. Basically, they rearranged things he said to make it sound like he put a secret in the video when in fact he didn't put any secrets there. It was, as typical with the media, they distorted the truth. They lied about it. But here's the part I want you to hear from the short reel.
If I was standing where the treasure chest is, I'd see trees, I'd see mountains, I'd see animals, I'd smell wonderful smells of pine needles or pinon nuts, sagebrush, and I know the treasure chest is wet. Well, you've asked me a lot of questions, and most of them I've answered, a few I haven't, but I gotta tell you, there's one thing I told you that I wish I had not.
That's the part that I ranted about. I'm not going to repeat the rant, but basically the whole thing's a lie. And if you search on the internet back in 2015, you could prove that. And Forrest Fenn, of course, admitted that when he said pinion nuts, he meant pinion nuts slash pine nuts. That, because they all smell the same. And he said I wasn't providing a hint to direct anybody to a specific state.
What we're trying to do with this, just like on, is basically explain. We want the delivery of this, in this piece.
You want what?
Basically, our idea for this video is to basically have. We're not going to have you come out and say, "Here's a clue."
You're looking for something new?
No. What we want to end with, honestly, is you saying, "I've already said too much," and make people think somewhere in what you've already delivered there was a clue, but not, kind of a poetic, cryptic delivery is essentially what we're trying to say. So if you've never told people that the treasure is wet, then the clue is already there. You understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Well, you've asked me a lot of questions, and most of them I've answered, a few I haven't, but I gotta tell you, there's one thing I told you that I wish I had not.
Forrest was instructed to tell that lie. He never said anything anywhere in this video. They do that to try to. It's clickbait. They're trying to market this video. They're trying to get tourists to come to New Mexico. So they essentially lie, or not right out lie, but they distort it, or they present things in such a way that it's going to entice people to watch this 50-minute version of the full interview, even though there's really nothing in there to see. In fact, as I went through it and I showed you, there was really nothing that we already didn't know. But a couple of people commented on my video, and I wanted to bring something up because when I watched this video, one thing I did notice is that Forrest brought up the same typical stuff. He emphasized how important it is that you know where to start. He emphasized that if you don't have the starting location, you have nothing. He said that that you have to know where to start. You could read and study the poem, and then, of course, refer to the hints in the thrill of the chase if you need help determining what the clues mean. He's essentially saying to you that you have to know what the clues mean as they're written in the poem. In other words, you're not ready to read the poem and go out and try to find places on a map that are synonymous with the clues in the poem because the way they're written in the poem is too vague to have the true meaning. So you have to figure it out. Now, one of the things in our solve that I've been saying is that the poem actually tells you what to do, in order to figure out the most important clue, which is where warm waters halt. If Forrest didn't want you to study the poem, he already told us before this interview in 2015. I think he told us in 2013 on that Australian radio show or the New Zealand radio show. I forget which one. But he basically said the first clue is begin at where warm waters halt, right? Everybody knows that. Now, however, if it was that simple, then why wouldn't he just say, okay, well, just pull up a map and then go find a place where warm waters halt? But he doesn't say that. Okay. He's telling you that it's important that you know where to start. So he kept on throwing hints out there telling you, hey, dummies, read the poem because it tells you exactly where to go. Because if you don't have the exact spot to start, you're not going to have anything but a nice vacation. He was asked in another video that I had made, and I showed you. As a matter of fact, I think it was the Lorraine Mills video of anything that surprised him in the chase. And one of the things he said is, I was surprised at how quickly people jumped right to the maps and tried to find places where the clues are. That was actually an indirect hint that that's not what you're supposed to do. Kind of like Jack said in his other video on the channel, you have personal bias. And if you want to open up a map and then start, or even a dictionary and start looking at the clues and trying to find synonyms, you're going to end up getting yourself into a ton of trouble because it's not what you find or what you think that it means. You have to find out the true meaning of the clues in the poem. And I believe in this interview, he stressed that a lot and a lot. And I think that might be why Jack put it here, because I believe that Jack used our solve in order to find the starting location. He did not solve the poem by himself. He used the stuff that Sam Smith and I had worked on. I'm sure of that. And the same thing with the discussion about S corps and proxy item stuff. I was the first person to talk about that stuff back in 2018. And after I made my YouTube channel, I went on the Gypsy's Kiss show, okay, with Toby, and we discussed that while I was on there. Now, this happened in 2018, back when, of course, Jack claims that he first began his search. And I discussed that I don't believe you find the chest, or when you do, there's going to be some kind of a legal document or a land trust deed. Somehow you're bound to that before you can actually gain legal access to the chest. And it was possible for Forrest to put the chase up in Wyoming. In other words, the poem solves to Wyoming, okay? And that's how you get the title to the gold. But the gold itself, or the treasure itself, could have been buried north of Santa Fe in the mountains. And that would explain why Jack had to go down there. And anyway, when you watch this video, just pay attention on how much he discusses that you have to know where to start. That's the most important thing. And I'm sure that he doesn't just mean, oh, you go to begin at where warm waters halt. That's where you start. So boom, let's go to a map and let's start thinking of places like the Sink or, Flaming Gorge or Madison Junction or, anywhere. You don't know. There's probably thousands of places where you can discover, but we want the place. The other thing you need to keep in mind is that although he claims there are hints in the thrill of the chase, and I do too. In fact, I was the one who showed how to locate the first hints, which is in Jumpstarting the Learning Curve, where he teaches you the sliding trick. And that is the only chapter that you will find the words Forrest Fenn alone in the book, right? So there's a method to use the poem as if it was a table of contents for the thrill of the chase to find the hints, if you want to do that. Now, although there's no ciphers and stuff used in the poem, or anagrams and stuff like that. He did a lot of tricks in the book. It's not easy to find the hints. They're very subtle, and he says out on the edge. So the point of that is that your solution, when you come up with it, has to work without any backstory whatsoever. In other words, your solution needs to work without having to know that Forrest Fenn was a pilot, without having to know he was in the military, without having to know he was shot down, without having to know that he was a fisherman, without having to know that he liked to catch brown trout, without having to know that he spent all the time in Cody and up in you know, Yellowstone every summer. You don't need to know that he wore hush puppies and he lived in Santa Fe. You don't need to know any of that stuff. You can use all of that stuff as hints, but you need to do kind of what Jack said to remove all the bias and back up. And in order to make a confirmation with yourself or to prove your sob, it has to work with just the poem. So I don't see any place in the poem that talks about fishing and bathing in the Firehole River or geysers or, you know, even the fact that Forrest is in a war. None of that stuff was there. So now, if you think about it, Forrest knew all along the strongest point was in order for this treasure hunt to work, he had to make a way that you could find the precise starting location. That's why he keeps iterating how important it is. So he had to do that. Otherwise, people would never be able to find it. You can go to a million places. And then if you start taking that number of places where warm water salt and then multiply it by the number of canyons, by the number of homes of browns and stuff, you can end up anywhere. You know, if you don't know where to start, the map will lead you anywhere. So you know that the map starts at beginning where warm water salt, but you have to find out where warm water salt is. And like I said, Forrest knew that. So Forrest had to provide a way. So what Forrest did is he boldly put the starting location right there in the poem. And he didn't do it with any subterfuge. Now, subterfuge is something that he would use to deceive or hide, or, you know, in other words, he would tell a lie in the poem in order to throw people off. And he said none of that stuff exists. He says that it's very straightforward. So the only way to get something that's very straightforward is that he would actually have to write it and put it right in front of your face. You can't translate any words. You can't use homonyms or synonyms, stuff like that. It has to work with just the poem. So everything within context of the poem has to support your whole sob 100% from beginning to end. The minute you start describing your sob and you say, well, Forrest loved fishing on the Madison River, then you've already blown it. And if you say, well, Forrest took no far to, you know, not far, but too far to walk, 10 miles, because that's what he was talking about, you know, to get to Baker's Hole. Well, that didn't come out until too far to walk. So again, this needs to work without any scrapbooks, without any hints, without any, even without the thrill of the chase. Forrest could have hid the chest, wrote the poem, and then died the next day before the thrill of the chase even came out and the poem should still work. That's the way this has to be solved. So you need to throw everything you know about Forrest out of your mind and focus 100% on the poem. And you know, I say that, and I say that as if it's very simple. And I think a lot of people don't understand exactly what I mean when I say to take the poem literally. And I'm going to try to explain it again. This is it's really hard to explain, but just try to forget about complexity and you know, open up your mind and use your imagination. Forget about ciphers and hiding things. Just read the poem in your mind, but understand the context, the big picture. Don't focus on individual words. Take everything literally. In other words, I'll give you an example. When I was a programmer way back in the 80s, some of the copy protection that we would use for games, stuff like that on the 8-bit machines, involved what we called self-modifying code. In other words, the game itself would depend on information that we would, for example, hide in sectors on a disk that were outside of range, the normal range, and they'd bump ahead to go out there and read that normal range. And then when the startup code run, it would basically take the information that was in the error track and store it in memory on top of the code. And if that didn't happen, the game would just simply run it and crash. So that was one way that they tried to defeat pirates back in the 80s, you know. So I was thinking about that being a programmer for, I mean, since like the early, actually the late 70s, I was always into computers and messing around with computer programming. And in the mid 80s, I made it my career. So I've been doing this for a long time. So I said, maybe this is what he did with the poem. Maybe the poem is actually a set of instructions in order to construct the map that takes you from point A to point B, right? And I'm not talking again about ciphers here. I'm saying read the poem. So let me show you an example of what I mean. So let's take a look. The first stanza is not where you start in the poem. He said it's not the first clue. The first clue is beginning where warm water salt. We already know that, right? But this is the first stanza in the poem. So let's look at that. That first stanza is 4 lines, but it's actually one sentence. Okay. So you want to try, before you go looking up anything in a dictionary, you want to break down that sentence. Break it down into clauses and phrases so that you can understand the context. So to do that, let's first make it a sentence. So when you want to look in a sentence, the first thing you're going to want to do is try to find the main clause, because the main clause is going to be where the main subject or the main point. Every clause is going to have a subject and a verb, but there's always one main subject and one main verb in every sentence. Can't be in a dependent or a subordinate clause. A subordinate clause starts with a subordinating conjunction. That's what we have here, okay? As I have gone alone in there, and with my treasures bold. Now, the reason why that's called dependent or subordinate is because if I said that to you, let's just say, as I was walking down the street with my baseball bat, and then I just stopped. Well, obviously, that's not a complete thought. That's not a sentence. It's not a sentence. It depends on something else in the main sentence. So this cannot be where the main subject is. So let's look at the rest of it. I can keep my secret where. Now, that is, believe it or not, is actually a complete sentence. I can tell you, I can keep my secret in the vault and just stop there. I don't need to tell you what the secret is. I've got my verb. I've got I can keep. Okay. What am I keeping? Well, I'm keeping where? My where. Secret is being used as an adjective here in this phrase. My. Whose secret is my secret. Okay. So it's my secret where. In other words, he's keeping a location secret in the poem, in the spot. That is a full sentence right there on its own. This is another dependent or subordinate clause, because I can't just come to you and say, and hint of riches new and old. We've got a verb, okay, we got hint, and then we got riches new and old, okay. These are just adjectives modifying telling you the kind of riches, right? So I can hint of riches, right? This is a prepositional phrase. What are you hinting? I'm a hint of riches. What kind of riches? New and old. But either way, because of the conjunction and, this can't be a sentence on its own. So the main clause, the main independent clause of that entire stanza is I can keep my secret where. That's the main thing. So then we will go ahead and add in the second part that connects to that. So let's just call this the main topic of the sentence. The main topic of that sentence is I can keep my secret where and hint the riches new and old. Now, although it ain't written this way, what we have here is we have compound verbs. We have keep and hint. Whenever you have a helping verb like can, and then you connect it to another verb, we have keep and hint, the helping verb doesn't need to be repeated. But what it really means is you would read it like that. I can keep my secret where, and I can hint the riches new and old. So basically, he's doing two things. I can keep my secret where and hint the riches new and old. So what's the point of this subordinating conjunction? Well, as I've said in my other videos, this is setting up a set of conditions that are going to help you so that you can locate where he is keeping his secret. So he's telling you, as I have gone alone in there, okay, and with my treasures bold. That doesn't mean that he went there twice, okay? It means that he's telling you two different conditions. You have treasures bold, but then you also have him going alone in there. All right. And as I discussed in the other video, we know, and Forrest also says it again in this interview, that a piece of him is in the treasure chest. So you could read this and you could assume that I might be Forrest Fenn speaking from within inside the treasure chest. Remember, use your imagination. So suppose you found this poem somewhere. One way to think of it is that Forrest is inside the chest and he's calling to you and he's pulling you towards himself. So that pretty much explains that stanza, but let's break it down a little bit more now that we know the full context of that stanza. If we look at the very next line, it's going to say, begin it. Right there, you need to stop, okay? Because what is it? We don't know what it is. And I know a lot of people just assume that, well, it just means the quest. Well, how do you know that? Prove that. Why? He says, begin it. Suppose he wants you to begin another set of actions. Suppose I told you to go begin digging a hole of where the chest was buried. If you don't do exactly what he's saying, so you're beginning a set of steps. But what if he means, begin a process or a procedure? It's not as simple as quest, but either way, you need to know what that procedure is, right? So we don't yet know that we're on a quest. But what we do know is it must refer to something that was previously known or something that you're about to be told. So the only thing the line says is begin it where warm water's halt. So he's not telling you, what it means warm water's halt. He's not saying begin where warm water's halt. He's saying begin it. So begin something where warm water's halt. But that something, again, then in that case, has to be something that we previously known. So that is referring back to the stanza again. By the time we reach the end of the stanza, we should know what it is that we are to begin. Now, remember, like I said, Forrest Fenn had to get a way in the poem for you to figure out the starting place. If he didn't do that, the poem's not going to work because you would end up going to random places. And that is the whole reason why I believe there's two phases. Phase one is look at the poem and use the poem in order to determine the answers, the solutions to the clues. And then phase two, once you know where to start, you go and get a map at that place, and then you use the map and any historical information available at that place. If it's in Yellowstone, it's in Yellowstone. If it's at the Medicine Wheel, it's there. If it's in wherever it is, you get a map of that place because you now know where warm water salt is or what it is. So you get a map of that place and you refer to the kiosks or other information that's on site. Okay, there should be no research required other than Googling information about that particular site. So for example, if you thought that it was Yellowstone, you can Google about Yellowstone, but it shouldn't be obscure information because that gets into research. It's got to be information that's available if you went to Yellowstone and went in there and got a pamphlet. Or if you go to the website for Yellowstone, all that information should be available to a general tourist. So again, even if it was at the sink, right? Even if it was at the sink over by land, or if it was at the wheel, the information for that needs to be at the sink itself or at the wheel itself. If I go to the ranger station at the wheel or look at one of the kiosks, the information has to be there. If the information is not there, then my solve is wrong. Period. Right? I mean, there's no sense in debating this anymore. The chest has been found. Okay, there's nothing there. But according to Jack, you could still solve and prove the solution to the poem, even though the treasure is not there. And that's what I've been trying to do. So again, now first step is we're finding out what the clues mean. So we've deciphered the meaning of this, and let's go and look at some of the definitions now. I is a person, place, or a thing. It's the speaker in this case. But remember, it could be an inanimate object talking to you. It doesn't have to be a physical person. So the verb is have gone. Okay, and he's giving you the tense there. This actually means that he's gone and he hasn't returned yet. So that means that whatever it is still there. It might be. Now we're focused on the poem at this point. Remember, I said take everything literally. So when we read, as I have gone alone in there, there in this case is being used as a noun. And what it means is at or in that place, to, into, from, or towards that place. So you might ask yourself, what is that place? Well, we don't know yet. But what we do know right now is we're in the poem. So that place is the poem, right? And we're trying to figure out the poem. And he's telling us right here that he's gone alone in there. So that means that in there is one of the conditions. There's something in there or in the poem, okay? But it's not only in the poem, it's also with my treasured poem. Let's go. What does with mean? Well, with is a preposition. It means next to, alongside of, within, accompanying. Remember all of those words. I'm going to go ahead and delete that now to try to clean things up here because we know, just remember, with is a preposition. It means next to, all right? Next to, alongside of, within, or accompanying. We have the noun, which is right here. So he's with his treasures, okay? That's the noun. Whose treasures? My treasures. Bold is telling you that the treasures are bold. It's an adjective. It means that it's striking in appearance, clear and distinct to the eye, steep or abrupt, strong and pronounced, prominent. That's what it means. He's not talking about himself being bold. He's saying his treasures are bold. The word treasures itself is bold. The treasure chest is bold. So if I, as a chest speaking to you, or Forrest Fenn speaking from within the chest, he's in there if that was the chest, and his treasures are bold. The treasure chest itself is decorated, stands out, conspicuous to the eye. But even when you open it, the gold, the jewels, all of that stuff is boldly displayed. So he said he's gone alone in there and with my treasures bold. At this point of the poem, by the time we reach the end of this stanza, we still don't have there. All we have is he's with my treasured fold. So he's already here once. So we have half of this condition set up already. We need to do the beginning part, this part, in order to make this whole thing true. Because those are the conditions that tell us how he's keeping his secret where and hinting at riches new and old. So again, let's get rid of the stuff we discussed already. So rich is, of course, the noun. It means valuable material, possessions, items, resources, or property. So we'll get rid of that. Treasure. Now, this can be valuable or precious possessions of any kind that are kept and accumulated. It could be jewels, it could be monuments, parks, historical places. You know, they always say that the Grand Canyon is a national treasure. Yellowstone National Park is one of our country's treasures. The medicine wheel is a treasure. The sink is a treasure. He says that he's going to hit the riches new and old, right? Well, what is alone? What does treasures mean? Well, he already hinted right here of riches new and old. Treasures. He's making it bold. He's drawing attention to it, making it stand out, and it itself is a hint of riches new and old. So again, we have one of the conditions set up. We have his treasures bold, but we don't have the first part set up. What does secret mean? A secret means adjective, hidden or confidential, not expressed directly. So for those people that like to say, well, no, he said that, there's no subterfuge. Subterfuge is something that was put there to intentionally mislead you. This isn't subterfuge. Or somebody says that it has to be in plain sight. Yes, it needs to be in plain sight, meaning that you shouldn't replace any words, or there's no anagrams, there's no trickery, there's no tomfoolery, as Forrest used to like to say. But it is hidden and confidential. It's not expressed directly. That is what secret means. So if where is his secret, where is secret is the adjective modifying where, that means that is something hidden that's not expressed directly. Okay. So that is most likely what we're going to find in there. Right. And the other thing is keep. What does keep mean? retain possession of, to cause, to continue to be in a state, conditioned, or maintained. So, in other words, these are the conditions that cause him to keep his secret where and what he's going to do, and this into riches new and old. So that's our keep. And by the way, for there, like I said, we have in there. It's a noun in a prepositional phrase, dislocation. It means at or in that place, to, into, from, or towards that place. Now, that's one place where we have the word there, right here. The next time we see the word there in the poem is being used as a noun again. He says, from there. In other words, here's some other sentence examples. I come from there. Let's go there. Okay. So in both cases, all these cases, and even in the poem, from there is again meaning a noun. Again, at, in that place, to, into, from, or towards that place. Then we find there again, because of the contraction, there will. There'll be no paddle up your creek. But in this case, it's being used as a pronoun, and actually, it's an introductory phrase. It's introducing a clause or a sentence. In other words, if I said there are numerous items, or there must be another exit, or there is someone at the door, obviously there is not talking about a place in any of these locations. So he's introducing it down there. He's saying there will be no paddle up your creek. So he's introducing a clause that's telling you that there'll be no paddle up your creek. So it's not an instruction in that case. And it's not being used to refer to a place. So the only two places that there is being used as a noun and referring to a place is right here. And then also where on the third stanza, where it says from there. So maybe that's what we have to do. We have to take something, which is it, begin it from this stanza that we already know, and we need to get it in there. That's where treasure comes up. Now I'm going to say again to take this literally, and I'm going to kind of go overboard here just to show you how imaginative I want you to be. We're dealing with the poem. We're dealing with text. Now the word place, we know there refers to a place. Place is also a noun. And and the definition is an area with definite or indefinite boundaries, a particular spot, a specific spot. I could write other sentences like, I bought a place on the beach. I bought a place on the lake. This is not the place to argue. I lost my place in the book. I threw that one in there intentionally because, as you can see, this is not referring to a place on Earth. It's referring to a place in the book. How do you know in there it couldn't be referring to a place in the poem? Especially given the fact that we just read it in the stanza and everything that I just told you. Let's look at the word there. Now this is not required, but I want to go over. I want to make this so obvious to you, or so clear of how literally he wants you to take this poem. But remember, you're not supposed to change the words, and you're not supposed to remove them, or there's no, ciphers or anything going on. But he's saying, as I have gone alone in there. All right. So what's alone in there? Well, T is alone, H is alone, R is alone. E is not alone because there's two E's in there. Well, we have THR. But let's continue here now. What's the rest of the condition? As I have gone alone in there and with my treasures bold. Now remember, with means among, alongside, within. So let's look at treasures. It needs to be in there and in treasures, right? And alone in there, but not, he doesn't say he's alone in with his treasures. He just says, I'm alone in there and with my treasures bold. So it could appear more than once in here. But we've already ruled out E because E is not alone in there, right? So let's look at THR. Well, right off the bat, there's no H in there, so we can get rid of that. So the only things that we have left is T and R are in there and with my treasures bold. When we get down to the next stanza, which is, okay, begin it where warm waters halt. So if we're going to assign it equals treasure, then we're going to begin with the T, right? Because we're going to begin it where warm water salt. So begin treasures where warm water salt. That means this T right here. Now there's only one T in the word treasures. So we already have the T. So when we need an R now. So obviously now at this point, R is what we're looking for. As I have gone alone in there and with my treasures bold. We already have treasures bold here. Is complete, but we're not in there yet. Okay. So we know we're looking for an R. We've already accounted for the T, right? So we continue and take it in the canyon down. Okay. But there's no R in there, right? So we don't have the R. Not far, but too far to walk. So he's telling us to not use far, not far. He's saying, so don't take the R from far. But he's also saying too far to walk. So what he's telling you here is that it's not far, it's close. Okay. We want to go in there. We want to, whenever we have a choice to make, we're going to not take the first choice, but we're going to take the second choice that is not the one that's too far to walk before we get into the canyon. And now he's actually giving us another instruction. He's saying, put in below the home of Brown. So this line is the home of Brown. So he's telling you to put in below the home of Brown. Remember, we're working in the poem here. So that means that he wants to put these lines in below the home of Brown. Begin doing it up here, and then we take it in the canyon, not far, but too far to walk. So we're finally in the canyon down. This, and I also consider this the canyon, this column right here. So we're trying to spell out treasures in there. We already have the T, we already have the R. Once we get that R, we have him alone in there, and with the treasures bold. So we're gonna start revealing his secret where, and the secret where is going to appear right before our eyes, right? So we have from there. Now remember, we just said in there. He went alone in there, and the only other time that there appears as a noun is here, where it's referring to a place. So we have to take the R from there. He's telling us to do it from up here. And not only that, he's telling us again here, not far. In other words, don't take the first one that you could walk to, but too far to walk. It's not going to be the first one. It's going to be the second one, right? And he confirmed it up here because this is alone in there, and with the treasures bold. We had only T and R fit that. So we already got rid of the T. Now we have an R. So we have it. So we're going to take that, and we're going to take the R from there and put that in position. I don't want to get into the solving again, but again, you're reading the poem. You're doing everything that the poem tells you to do. So we already satisfied this, and we have treasure, and he's now alone in there. We're finishing up the word treasure in the poem, and he's alone in the word there, up here again, and with his treasures bold up here. So we satisfied the condition that we're going to reveal a secret down here. And then, of course, from this point on, it's like from there, and now here we have the word it again. It apostrophe s it's not possessive. It's a contraction of it is. Okay. So if we have begin it, take it. Okay. So we got this all done up here. But now he's giving another hint saying it is no place for the meek. From there, it is no place for the meek. Well, no place for the meek is the end. You see what I'm doing here? And again, you see that we made the second choice because we had two E's. The end is ever drawing nigh, right? Now he has a semicolon there. That comes in later when your boot's on the ground. And then, of course, we have the next line. Right here, it just said the end. The end was the answer to no place for the meek, right? So now he's telling you, no, it is. He's saying it is ever drawing nigh. So we need to get these letters out of this column because it's drawing nigh or left. And what we're going to do is shift this line left, okay, so that there are no letters in this column. So we have that line there, just heavy loads and water high. Again, we're going to use the second A, right? So in other words, if there's no paddle up the creek, you're not going to have the water high part, but that's in the discovery. So again, we want to push this over there so that we get the A and loads under in the treasure column. Consider everything beyond this point to on this side over here is all in the canyon. Okay. We've essentially we pushed everything into the canyon in order to get the word treasure lined up boldly along the steep incline in this column. So now we have the secret message, right? Try the wheel. And then we don't have treasure spelled, but we don't need to pay attention to that column. We have end. Try the wheel end. There's your message. Try the wheel END. That's the way I like to read it. Try the wheel END. PBNJ END. Okay. And then, of course, the rest of the solve again. I'm not going to continue this part, but that's what I mean again. Just, look at the poem. Really look at the poem and do what it says. We're not doing random things here. We're doing what the poem told us. I'm not using any other words other than what he told us to do here. I'm not making things up. So at this point, the next stanza, okay, if you've been wise and found the blaze, in this case, the blaze is the end, and then the end again over here. So in the poem, when he says your quest to cease is the end. So when he's saying look quickly down, he's ending it. So you don't want to read anything below that for the starting location because it's all decoded up here, really. Try the wheel. So the only purpose for those other stanzas is to confirm which wheel. Well, the one in Wyoming. Okay. What kind of wheel? Well, it's the medicine wheel. Tired, weak, And then of course the other stanzas come in when you have so below. We've done everything above now. We've done the as part. We've finished it. We're done as I have gone alone in there. Now have as above, so below. So at this point in the poem, the place where warm waters halt. So stanza 4 and stanza 5 and 6 are going to confirm what we need to do when we're boots on the ground. And it's going to tell you how to confirm what the physical blaze is. So again, we've ended the end. So there's your blaze, the end. He's telling you to stop reading the secret message of where, the part where he's going to disclose where. So where do warm waters halt? Well, he's telling you to try the wheel. He doesn't say the wheel. So warm waters halt, don't halt at the wheel. But what we have to do is we have to go to the place where the wheel is. And then we start the poem over again. But this time, like T.S. Eliot, we have arrived at the starting location and we know the place for the very first time. We've confirmed it. We have evidence in the poem that's conclusive that we're in the right starting point. He's saying to try the wheel. So if we try the wheel, if we try the wheel, it's going to reveal where warm waters halt and what the canyon is and yada yada. And that's how everything played out in our solve at Five Springs. Again, none of this stuff is random. None of this required any research. None of this is hard. None of this required any backstory, no anagrams, no trickery, no tomfoolery. And my next video, just for grins and giggles, because of what Dave from New York said, I'm going to go ahead and put out a video that's 2 minutes long and explains the whole solve from beginning to end. 2 minutes long. And it's not going to require any research that isn't available boots on the ground. So my challenge to you, Dave, is let's see your solve that is 2 minutes long in a video and explains everything from beginning to end, and zero information in your video comes from any place other than the poem and a map of your location. I don't want to hear that you had to go and read this or you had to translate words from Spanish to English or this or that. No, it needs to be available on site. So if you're going to pick Eagle's Nest, then you show me at Eagle's Nest, where it explains that Eagle's Nest is the home of Brown. How did you determine that? A home is a place of origin, okay? And brown is essentially what the Plains Indians are. They're brown people. They're brown skinned. They're not redskins. Redskin is actually a derogatory term, okay? The Plains Indians are brown, and a place of origin is a home. By the way, this is just a teaser. Something I found out that when I was doing some research. When I was doing some research on my last video, and I mentioned this to Candy, but I found out something interesting when I was looking at it. Look at the Indian symbol for Hogan. It's a friggin' wheel. And Hogan, the Indian symbol, means a permanent home. Okay. Hogan definition in the dictionary. A one-room Navajo structure traditionally built with the entrance facing east, used as a dwelling for ceremonial purposes. Early Hogans were made of earth-covered poles, with later models often built of logs, stones, and other materials. So there we go, a Hogan, permanent wheel. It's an Indian petroglyph of it is a wheel. So now the home of Brown at my place is the wheel, which is a Hogan, which represents a home. And then we have the bench with Francis Brown, Charles Brady, and Hammond Wise on there. And those are the three principal, note that word, principal. Forrest Fenn's father was a principal. Well, those are the three principal fathers in the Coalition for the Wheel. And the Coalition for the Wheel considers Medicine Mountain their spiritual home for 81 tribes. And Five Springs, documented on site, is considered the crossroads of culture for 81 tribes. That's the spiritual place of origin for those people. And, so this is yet a third thing that I discovered. Every time I turn around, I'm discovering something about that. Of course, you're not going to read about this. This is additional information. This is not at the wheel, but it's just something that I noticed when I looked at this here, Native American symbols and descriptions. Like I said, peace is a broken arrow, right? Protection is an arrow facing right. Crossed arrows is friendship. Medicine man's eye is wise and watchful. Okay, that's what the medicine man's eye looked like. And then, like I said, now you have down here the Hogan is a permanent home. It's a spoked wheel. Interesting stuff, man. I mean, it's really cool stuff. So anyway, that's all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please help me by passing it around. Click like below and please subscribe. And I'll see you all next time. Peace.